say how it is. Okay, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. That's how I would normally introduce my videos. Welcome to the Flat Earth Social. Some faces I recognise, some faces I don't. My name's Sven. I've been kind of connected with this event since it started back 2 years ago, I think it is now, isn't it? Over 2 years. In Swanage, the Globe Inn. I've known Ian and his wife Lisa for a few years because I was involved in a few other things concerning Flat Earth back in the day, go back to 2017. And I was asked to sort of join to help out this evening and have a little chat. And I haven't got a presentation as such, although I do have a flip chart in case somebody wants me to draw a straight line and explain how that can't be curved. I can even do parallel lines as well. Yeah, so I'll just, I suppose, say a couple of things about me without making it too boring. And then I'll talk a little bit about a couple of bits that I've written down because my memory is shot. And go through a little bit of a recent timeline. And we'll then take some questions. Some of them have already been written down, and then we can have a bit of an interaction, see where everyone's at on whatever topics we want to talk about. So going back to 2017 is when I started getting involved with Flat Earth, and it all happened quite quickly. And the thing that really did it for me, everyone's got their own story, but the one thing that kind of resonated with me was this thing called the Earth Curve Calculator. One of the things you notice today when you talk about Flat Earth is that even if you have irrefutable proofs, one of the comebacks you'll get is, well, yeah, but the Earth is still a globe. Even if you can demonstrate that the horizon is flat, by the very definition of the word, it is flat, and so on. So the Earth Curve Calculator gave me something to hold on to and make my head work it out a little bit and go, okay, that means that after a certain distance, that can't happen, or you should be able to see that, etc., etc. And that was about the time as well when a lot of these laser experiments, we'll call them that, it's the wrong word to use, but it doesn't matter for argument's sake now. These tests and observations were carried out to demonstrate that over long periods of time, long distances I should say, there is no curvature, or there's nothing in the way to obscure your view to the target that you're looking at. And I always never understood how that didn't resonate with more people. There seemed to still be so few of us around with these sorts of topics, not just Flat Earth, but Flat Earth for me was the one that really kind of set this way of thinking off for me properly. Now I know that there's a lot of topics that are interlinked. I mean, we have one that's still occupying our minds today that happened in the last few years, right? Where there's been a lot of denial, even though you can prove things, but yet you've got a brick wall that you're fighting against. So, excuse me for looking at my notes, if I can read my own writing. So basically, what happened was back in 2019, there was a convention in Kidderminster, and so I decided to go along. It was the most expensive day and a half out I've ever had. It cost me over 200 quid because I had to come out to Bournemouth to work at Bournemouth Football Club. But I got to know a few people in the so-called community. People like Martin Leaker, people like Dave Murphy, people we've had here presenting. And I realised that they also had a thing called a Euro tour planned. Basically what happened was a couple of gentlemen had hired a minibus or a camper van, plastered it with stickers from different content creators, and set off on a journey to go around Europe, starting in England via Amsterdam, and they ended up doing 3 months, I think it was roughly, over 18,000 miles and 39 different countries. And I partook in 4 weeks of that, 3 months. There were a couple of people who were on it the whole time. I don't know how. I couldn't have managed it the whole time, but yeah, I managed 4 weeks roughly, 2 stints. And but I learned a lot in that time about where people, the general public, are at, because there's a huge difference between interacting online and talking about these sorts of topics and actually going out amongst the public, which for me, well, that's my bread and butter. That's where I think it's at, is talking to real people, not talking online and getting all frustrated because you don't even know who you're talking to for a kickoff. And the resonance we got from that tour was huge. The feedback was really, really good. But then something called COVID happened. And that was the beginning of 2020. And because we had things like we had a UK uni tour planned where we were going to go along the south coast of England, go to universities and have debates with university lecturers. That was all planned. Bournemouth was going to be the main one, actually, funny enough. And we had people that were going to fly in from Denmark and Germany and all sorts to join us, who we'd met on the Euro Tour a few months beforehand, who we stayed in touch with. So, the networking was working very well. And I still, to this day, maintain that part of a lot of the lockdown stuff that was going on was to curtail initiatives like the one we had, because we were definitely generating a lot of traction. We had people being invited onto mainstream morning shows to talk about it on ITV and things like that. They didn't quite say the right things, unfortunately, when they were on there and seized the opportunity. But nevertheless, we made the headlines in that sense. And there was opportunities there to reach the masses, which is what we were trying to do. Because it's an information war. And I'm very skeptical about the internet thing because it's all controlled. I just had a chat a minute ago with a couple of gentlemen there about, we get to see what we're supposed to see. It's not, how can I put it like this? If anybody's proud and says, oh look, they had a glass of water in the background there, which means NASA's faking it. Yeah, we're supposed to see that. Nobody from our side of things is coming across stuff or being great detectives. It's put in plain sight. We talk about it all the time. Everything's controlled online. If you think about where we're at now in the world, everywhere you call, you get referred to, look us up online. If possible, don't use cash. It's got to be part of the digital network, the smart network. Driverless cars are becoming a thing now. It's even written in our highway code. Has been for a while. Smart meters are being introduced in pretty much every household. Anyone who's got gas won't have gas for much longer. And so it goes on. So eventually we're going to be truly in a matrix, truly connected up to a smart matrix where you can't even burp without someone somewhere knowing about it. That's where we're at. So going online, chit-chatting about stuff and sharing videos with each other, do you not think someone's going to notice that? Yeah, they are. And you're allowed to. We're being enabled to use that platform to do that. So another thing is when they say, let's move from WhatsApp and use such and such a platform instead. It doesn't matter. If I own a stall at a fruit market and there are oranges, apples and pears, and you're a customer coming to my stall, you think you have a choice. Yeah, you do, but the money is going in my pocket. I'm offering the oranges, apples and pears, but all that is controlled by me. I'm the one who's put them out there for you. And that's how it works, on a much more complex scale. There's lots of layers to all of this. Level layers. So, and then same goes with the lie around the globe and around flat earth and all the rest of it. There's a lot of misinformation out there that we have to be wary of, even in our so-called flat earth communities. So if we're ever arguing flat earth, for example, be wary not to fall for the trap of, quoting historical things to back up your argument, because we have no validation for anything. Only use things that you can validate, that you can actually prove. Things that are factual, not things that you'd like to be factual. There's a difference. So there's also a problem. I don't have any problem with someone believing in a God. I believe in a creator. I have my problems with religious dogmas and doctrines. But quoting scriptures to then collect one's proof for flatness of earth, in my opinion, is the wrong way to go about it. The correct way is to use one's observations and think about it from a practical, logical point of view. It is actually very simple. It's just been made to feel very complicated by introducing science and different faculties, physics and this and that and the other. It's all nonsense. Water doesn't go around balls. And gravity is 109 years old. Because we've got fourth dimensional bendy space-time now, haven't we, from Einstein? Anyway, I was going off on a tangent there, as usual. So, at that time, when we were doing the UK unit tour, or we were going to do the UK unit tour, the whole COVID thing happened, like I said, and so a lot of us were resulted in staying at home and doing things like podcasts. So I did about half a year's worth of intense podcasts with a friend in America, and I mean the topics ended up going on about just that, the COVID thing, and how it could be, couldn't be, and then clips of videos and, videos of a ward in Italy, and then the identical ward being on a video from California, and then other cities in America, and all that sort of stuff. Again, in my opinion, put out there on purpose for us to then talk about and go, look, they're lying to us. Well, they know. They're in charge of it all. It's their casino. We're sat at the tables in their casino. I mean, this all ties in, my opinion on all this, by the way, all ties in with my old world research, because I don't believe that our civilization goes back as far as what we're told at school. I think the key moments there are what they call the Industrial Revolution, but I don't want to hop, skip and jump too much. I'll talk about more of that a bit later on if we have the time. But we have different rhetorics and narratives that came out around about that time. So, like I said, the Globe Light Tour, where we were still talking about I Can See Too Far. And then if you fast forward it to today, you very recently had somebody talking here called Nathan Oakley. And he is one of quite a few now who are on board with the latest narrative, and it's the silver bullet for me. And that is that we measure the Earth flat. It's the only way it can be done. We navigate the Earth flat. All our maps are flat. We aviate the Earth flat. We build to a flat Earth. We have to. There's no other way of doing it. It then gets transferred via something called a Haversine formula to then create a globe model. But those latitude lines that you find on the globe, for example, they've all been established through elevation angle measurements to Polaris, a star or light in the sky that doesn't move at all, even though it's supposed to be corkscrewing through an impossible vacuum of space at tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles an hour. Right, so just for demonstration purposes, I've always wanted to do this. So, do I show a bit of leg before or after? I'll stand this side. That's my better side. An angle. That is what we call a vertex. That is where you're standing when you're looking up at a star to get your ground position when you're navigating. This could be thousands of miles. That is your baseline. It's what we call horizontal or flat, kids. When you use your sextant or whatever it is, and you're looking up, this there requires two straight lines. That's the actual definition of an angle. One of those straight lines, and that's the prerequisite, is your horizon line. It's not that, right? You'll still have people who will argue the point and say, well, yeah, you might measure the Earth flat, but we're still on a globe. Think about how insane that is. I had those arguments. They are real. And when you check these people out, they've got accounts. They're not necessarily trolls. They just can't get it in their heads. So what does that mean then? When they suggest that you could measure locally flat, but we're still on a ball, how does that work? So, are we on a disco ball? Is that what it is? Do we have lots of little flat areas that then create what looks like a ball from a distance? No, of course not. So the problem is then, and if you learn about this stuff, especially in things like art, it gets taught to you, these things. You know what trigonometry is? It's a very simple thing. How to measure the height of a tree, for example. There's your tree. Looks a bit Christmas tree, doesn't it? There you go. Right. You want the height of that tree is what you're measuring, or what you're trying to figure out. So you have to ascertain the angle, but first of all you have to know the distance between yourself and the object. Now the only way you're going to do that is by having a flat baseline along the ground. We learned this at school when we were 10, 11 years of age. I'm explaining this for a reason, not because we're all dumb and we don't understand how trigonometry works, but the fact that we have actually learned all this stuff. It's been part of our curriculum, but it falls by the wayside. It's kind of quickly visited and then left, and then you move on. So it's kind of a bit like leaving things in plain sight. They show the truth right there for you to see, but they'll hand way past it, and you kind of, oh, hang on a minute, no, nothing to see there. Act like you've got it. We've been, all that sort of stuff. So this stuff is basics. It's my daughter knows all this. She asked me recently, how can an aeroplane fly around a moving globe or a globe that spins? She opened the door right up for me to get stuck into that topic. Because kids aren't stupid, they know. But yet here we are, I'm 51, sometimes finding myself arguing with people about the obvious, the non-debatable, the non-negotiable. Earth is measured flat. It has to be, and it always is. Line of sight technology is what gets used. A periscope wouldn't work on a globe, neither would a bloody lighthouse. Right? We have to think about this logically. The calculation, by the way, is from a 1 foot elevation, the horizon can be no further away than 1.22 miles. Now, with the naked eye on a sunny day, I could see the Isle of Wight from Bournemouth Beach. So that kind of blows that calculation out of the water, doesn't it? Yeah, so these are things that are in our face, and they're very obvious to see. So what do we actually do about this? That's why things like what we're doing tonight are so important. Not listening to me yakking away, but spending time with like-minded people, because there's a cathartic element to this for me personally. If you're spending your time in a world talking to people who blatantly disregard what you can present to them as quite clearly fact, then we have an issue. We have a problem that goes beyond whether the earth is flat or not. We've got then a problem with attitude. It's a societal issue. It's a much deeper issue than just the flat earth, isn't it? Right? That's why the whole topic fascinates me, because it interlinks with everyday society and the sickness that surrounds us, basically. And I mean, that was shown and demonstrated very clearly over the last few years when we went through the whole non-existence of something that allegedly killed us, even though we could see that wasn't the case at all. Well, it's a similar sort of approach that the masses seem to have, that they employ. Why is that? Are they paying too much attention? Is it that simple? The TV? Well, everyone walks around with smartphones now. So it's not the telly, is it? The telly's at home. So what is it? Is it just a simple appeal to masses? Is it a comfort feeling? I want to be part of a bigger crowd of people to make me feel safe. Is it an appeal to authority? I need to be told what to do, otherwise I can't survive. So I believe, it's all that thing going on. I mean, there is a thing called the power of contradiction, by the way, which is a very classic old tradition used by certain secretive circles, right? I won't mention them, otherwise I'll probably get lynched. But they have lots of lodges. But they employ a thing called the power of contradiction. I'll give you a couple of examples. One of them is, if you look at any old footage of NASA astronauts, NASA stands for not a space agency. If you look at the old footage, you'll notice that some astronauts talk about how they can see stars when they're out there, wherever out there means. And some will say they couldn't see any stars. Well, you'd think they'd line their stories up, wouldn't you? So what you do is you then have communities like ours arguing about it back and forth. Well, he said he saw stars, he said he didn't see stars, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's all done by design. Because what people then do is eventually then, when they can't make up their mind, is side with authority. So what they've done is they've offered you the choice that wasn't really one in the first instance. And you've gone and done what they've expected you to do, which is side with authorities. Because they kind of know you're going to do that. Because, well, I personally believe we were rolled out by them in the first instance as a civilization, as we know today. You know, we don't go back thousands of years like books tell us. That's an impossibility. I'll talk about that another time. So, yeah, you've got the power of contradiction, and the astronauts and all that is a good one. They did it through the COVID time, wear masks, don't wear masks. Well, which one? Which one is it? And so what did people do? They sided with authority and did the thing that caused them less stress. You know, didn't think, of course, what difference does it make if I wear a sunflower thing around my neck or not, right? And I mean, I won't even go there. I'm looking at Deborah because it is. We had those battles on a daily basis, trying to overcome this insanity, you know. Craziness, total craziness. And yet, the vilified ones were me. I mean, I had family members reporting me to not to the police, may as well have done, reporting me to the doctor.
Wow.
You know.
What, the doctor?
Yeah, reporting me to his doctor, a member of my family, because I hadn't had certain procedures done to me.
What did they think they were going to do? Put you to sleep?
I have no idea. So, yeah.
Hold you down. That's the
I have no idea what this all are going to do to me. Don't know. But I mean, I remember getting turned away once from. I don't want to make this into a COVID. Remember this kind of conversation, but one time I was walking past the GP in Boston, and I wanted to go in, and the nurse rushed out. I can't quite do it, but she rushed out, cape, and with her mask on, and said, "You're not coming in." No, imagine all this in slow motion, right? "You're not coming in here, full flow." And I was like, "Okay." And then the long and short of it is she slammed the door shut, and I remember looking through the window, and there were people sat in the waiting room. None of them were wearing face masks. So you had to wear one to enter the building. Once you were in, you checked in, you took your seat, you could take it off. Yeah. And I remember getting a letter a few days later telling me off about my disobedience and, you know, whatever the wording they used. Basically, I was a naughty boy, the way I behaved outside their door. You know when they tell you how to behave on a phone when you call up an authority and they said, you know, we employ a zero tolerance policy and any rude, behavioural or whatever, blah, 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 won't be accepted and all that sort of stuff. That's like, I don't know what's happening. But, yeah, so that, you know, when you're dealing with that sort of insanity, it's the same as going back to the flat earth thing, right? I can tell you that the earth is flat. I know it's flat. It's not a theory of mine. It is. That's how we measure it. It's just that simple. It's very simple. It's not a debate. There is no debate. I would never entertain a debate anymore. It's not my thing. I won't even really listen to them anymore because they don't excite me. There's nothing to win in a debate when you know, right? But what is of interest to me is to try and plant seeds with other people if you can. I think that's important because it keeps us going. You know, keep what you've got by giving it away kind of attitude. I think that's important. That's why I went on the Euro tour. It wasn't to sightsee Europe. I'm not being funny, but I've lived over there half my life in Germany. So I didn't go over there for that. I went over there because I wanted to, get away from England a little bit and see something else and be in a camper van and a bit of a feeling of freedom. I gave my job up for it and all that sort of stuff. You know, I was very much invested in this. But to be able to see the eyes of somebody when they actually think, well, hang on a minute, how does that work? That is quite interesting. But then, of course, you've got other people who say, well, if that's the case, why can't you see the Eiffel Tower from New York? Well, there's something called perspective. There's something called a vanishing point. There's something called angular resolution. And there's also shit in the air as well, where you sometimes can't see a few freaking yards in your own city. You know, not all pollution consists of dark smog. You know, sometimes there is stuff in the air and you can't see as far as you normally can on a clear day. So they're the sort of things that you have to know how to respond to them if someone throws them at you, if you've got a conversation around the table and someone tries to be clever. You know, of course I can't see the Eiffel Tower you can't even see the Eiffel Tower if you drive a few miles out of Paris. It ends up just not being big enough for your eyes to see, simple as that. You know. Yeah, anyway, so moving on, Eiffel Tower. There's an old world building that we've been lied to about, I should say. Always be wary of photos that show you the construction of old world buildings online. You'll find they're not real. Yeah, so basically, to finish this part of what I was going to say, no longer are we. Excuse me, ladies, can I help?
Sorry, ice cream, please.
Okay. I'll let Luigi know in a second. So just to round off this point I'm making, we've gone well beyond the point of saying to somebody of a globe ilk, well, it's your claim, you prove it to me. No. I can now make a positive claim to someone and say, I know, not I think or I hope, I know the earth is flat because we measure it like that. We measure it like that. It's how we do things. You wouldn't be able to get a plane in the sky or a ship on the ocean without elevation angle measurements. It's that simple. It's the way it's done. So, kids, make a note. Okay, bear with me. Oh yeah, what's your thoughts on space? Little green men, anyone? Asteroids, anyone? No? Milky Ways, black holes, anybody? No? Not black hole kind of girl? Or little green man kind of lad? No? Well, I've got some news for you. Space is fake. And it has to be as well. Because we have what's called natural law. Again, something we've learned about a little bit at school. That gases expand. And the only way they don't expand is if you contain them. Right? So on a larger scale, it's what we experience on Earth. Just for those who don't understand it, it took me a while to get it. And then I thought, well, obviously that makes sense. You know, the sheer fact that we have gas pressure on Earth means we must be in containment, which means we're in a closed system, which means we've never been out. Right? So that's that. It's the end of that. You'll often hear a counter-argument where they say, yeah, but we have gas pressure gradients, and the higher up you go, the thinner the air. Well, yeah, but you just said it yourself, gas pressure gradients. You have pressure in the first instance for you to have gradients. It has to be contained. Everything has to be contained. Water has to be contained. Otherwise we wouldn't have lakes and oceans. Or rivers, for that matter. You know. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that in case anybody's sort of a little bit, Darth Vader, is he real or not? No, he's not. Space is fake, I'm afraid. And Yoda, no. Not true, I'm afraid. And lightsabers, well, don't get me started on that. So yeah, we're talking about the refinement, really, of our arguments, and what, we're well beyond the point now of debating whether something is or isn't. And I don't know how you are all with this topic in terms of where are you at on flat Earth and stuff. Is everybody relatively confident if it ever comes up as a conversation, for example? Yeah, I'm seeing nods. So if someone was to talk to you and say, can you definitively say the Earth is flat? Would your response be, well, it could be a big ball? Or would your response be, absolutely, and here's why? Because there are people who won't be that on the money for whatever reason. But it appears in this room we're all on the same page, aren't we? And it's none of this, well, water doesn't bend round walls, because you're introducing then the possibility of gravity as a counter-argument. Well, yeah, but gravity keeps it all pulled to the iron molten core, innit? Right? The iron molten core that can't produce magnetism because it's molten iron, which doesn't produce magnetism. In fact, it kills it. But there is a mechanism apparently that then, circumvents that, and so we do have magnetism even though we have a molten iron core. We don't really, by the way, I'm just saying. We don't have a molten iron core. Or do we? Who put that there? So, are there any questions while I'm stood here before I read out? I've read a couple of questions before, right? I was dreading it. I knew it. Because I've got a couple that I can not possibly answer. Now, you might think that's a cop-out, right? But, shall I read one to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Help me out here, because if I don't have the answer, maybe you do. If other planets don't exist with alien life, how can we, humans, be a hybrid species genetically? Earth is flat, isn't it? Is that not connected with this question? No, not at all. Can anyone answer that? Anyone heard of us being a hybrid species?
Yeah.
Right? Can anyone explain what that means? And I'm not mocking this question, by the way. I'm truly not too sure.
Well, if the Earth is flat,
Right?
and they talk about an ice wall,
Who?
well, I don't know. I'm new to this, so.
No problem.
But I've always thought about this question about where are we really? We could be on a pimple on the back of a dog, couldn't we? Really? We don't know. But, and that's just being silly. But so what about if the Earth was flat?
The Earth is flat.
And then there's other continents that we know nothing about.
Okay. Yeah, that could be. It could well be. It couldn't. But it also could be, absolutely. I don't have an answer to
And
that.
also, could there be a Stargate?
Not out towards space, no, because space doesn't exist, but on the ground, maybe.
But not talking about space.
Because it said star, I was presuming.
Are we talking about different realities?
Maybe. We could well be, yeah. But they're just topics that I don't.
Or dimensions, but realities, dimensions.
Yeah, well, that could very well be, but again, I don't know. That's well beyond, and I don't think anybody can truly answer that. You could speculate and say, yeah, it sounds kind of right, or I resonate with that idea.
Well, I can understand it. There can be.
Understand it, but can I prove it? No.
Oh, I couldn't prove it.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? And if I can't validate or prove something, then I can't go with it as a proof or as a yes or no.
But my information is that there are realities.
Okay. Well,
Also,
Go on.
you said there's no such thing as space, right? I get that, but we're contained in a dome. But there must be something outside of that dome.
we can see there are. Yeah, we can see flickering lights out there, can't we?
Yeah.
What they are, I don't know though.
I mean, Polaris can't be outside of the dome because it would stay in the same place all the time. That's got to be inside.
Why?
Because it never moves.
But we're not moving.
No. And whatever's outside.
We're not in space hurtling around, are we? So if that's the case, then everything out of there is not moving either.
Yeah, I get that.
But
Yeah,
Admiral
yeah.
Byrd,
Who we don't know is really what we're told he was.
there were films, but there's also films of boats tied up alongside an ice wall
Yeah,
and flying along an ice wall.
yeah. Maybe to introduce that idea that there are ice walls and that we live on such a
Admiral
model.
Byrd was shut down for what he wanted to say in his diary.
He was also the youngest admiral of the US Navy and died the same year that NASA was invented.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
So we could
It's
have
just-
brought
I'm
the
just
ice wall
talking-
out as something
The
else.
thing with Admiral Byrd, and you make a good point, is one of the things that certainly when I got into Flat Earth in 2017 was a big discussion point was Admiral Byrd. We used to cite him as an example of how, look, ice walls, so that means the map, the model must be this one, the one that we call the azimuthal equidistant one, or Gleason's.
It doesn't necessarily have to be in a circle, does it?
No, but for organisation shape, I'll just do that. I could have done a triangle, but then I'll have the Illuminati on the back. But if we pretend that the ice wall does that somewhere, and then what we're saying is that there's an opening here or here, and there's been all sorts of things, and then beyond that there are also other continents, that could well be. And aliens, as we're told, when we talk about from outer space, perhaps the real space that is talked about is the space beyond the ice walls, as opposed to up there, which is what we've been kind of sold the whole time, right? Because they do like to flip things around, and they do like to put it in plain sight with wording. So there could be something to that, but I've not been there. And the thing is, and here's the problem as well, right? we can't even go to a place called Antarctica because we're not on a ball. So there is no Antarctica as we know it. There's no lump of ice continent underneath. So any journey to Antarctica is null and void before you've even done it. What you would be doing is travelling out, the North Pole being in the middle, for argument's sake, like a dartboard-esque kind of model, if you like. It is a model that gets used. I have a picture of an AE map on my wall. It's a nice looking picture, and it does actually make, to a degree, sense. You know, you've got the sun and the moon depicted on it. You know, your yin and yang, if you like. You know, they go around in a circle. And in the winter months, when we're in Europe, here in the middle, they go outwards, which means they're low on our horizon because they're further away. And then in the summertime, these bodies come closer, which of course means they're higher up in our horizon line, which gives us the summertime in the European countries, for example, or closer to the north, the centre of Earth, if you like, if we're talking about it as a flat plate-esque kind of model. But again, I have no proof that the model is like that. It's just something of perhaps intrigue, but nothing more than that, because we're never going to know. I don't even know what shape certain countries have, because we know space is fake. We know we haven't got out there and photographed Earth from a distance to be able to see what Africa looks like from up there, or Europe, or the United Kingdom when the BBC News puts the whole British Isles on your TV screen. Well, how have they got that? You know how high you've got to go to get that whole country in one shot?
You can prove that the shot of the British Isles is fake because you try and get in a train from somewhere up north, like Preston or Manchester, and go to Edinburgh or Glasgow. It takes a hell of a lot longer than it should do.
Right.
A hell of a lot, twice as long as it should. So it's obviously the way that it's shown is fake because the distance is much better.
Absolutely. And added to that, when you're flying in a plane, you don't know. Yeah, I mean, let's put it another way. When you're sat there and you're looking at the back of your neighbour's seat and you're seeing that arc that's showing you where your aeroplane is in the sky, you're flying over Portugal right now. And well, how do you know that? How do you know that is even there? You're not seeing anything out of your window. The next thing you see is when you're through the cloud covers, you're approaching your destination, then you'll say, oh, it's Lisbon, or wherever you're flying to. Beautiful city, by the way. I don't get a chance to get to Lisbon, go there, it's lovely. So that's all. So while we're in the sky, we don't even know how fast the plane is flying. We have indicators that tell us, but so what? What does that mean? It tells us. We have telescopes that show us planets, but we know that if we look through telescopes that aren't configured, there aren't planets when you look out into the heavens. Right? So you can be shown a lot of things because the equipment you're using has been doctored to show you what you're trying to look at. Right? But in actual fact, it's not. I'll give you an example. A guy called, I think his name was Eugene Kranz. He was in charge of the so-called Apollo landings. 1969, interesting year, interesting day. Anyway, I digress. And he said in an interview once that they could have, now this was code for, this was code for, this is what we did. He said they could have simulated the whole Apollo moon landings and nobody would have known the difference. Now why did he say that? I'll tell you why he said that. Because everybody sat down there doing all the math. Mathematics actually, it's plural, use an S, thank you. Right? They were just looking at numbers on their monitors. That's all. They weren't looking at shots from, there was no video footage of them bursting through the atmosphere and heading towards the moon as that piece of cheese is made of cheese, right? Got closer, and then they circle around it, and then they eventually land nicely, just like Egon, what's his name, Hip Flask's SpaceX, when they land back from whence they came at, right? Absolutely ludicrous, aerodynamically totally impossible, but of course you've got to be brain dead to believe it, because they're counting on the fact that half the population are, right? And then a few of them have got an extra shove, thanks to the last few years, by way of medical interaction. That sounds like a song right there, doesn't it? Medical interaction. So, what was I saying? Yeah, so Eugene Kranz says himself that if you could easily computer simulate the whole moon landings and those in what they called it, Cape Canaveral or wherever they were, they wouldn't have known the difference. So of course, if you're sat there working at your computer with all your numbers and you're doing what you're told to do, that's all you know. Like somebody builds a satellite, he might still, or she, or 100 things in between, got to keep it right, contemporary. When they build a satellite, that's their job done, that's it. They're not involved in space travel or anything else, that's it. My dad builds satellites, so of course space is real. Huh? I wear trainers, so what? What's that got to do with anything? What's that got to do with anything? So your dad builds satellites, and that's it. That's all he knows. Even if your dad built rockets, he wouldn't know where it's going. You know, so all these arguments, you know, I was there in New York City, they were definitely planes. There's that sort of argument. Right? No, you think you saw them, but do you actually remember seeing them, or do you remember seeing them? There's a difference. The way the brain works in really peculiar ways, especially when you've been exposed to lots of indoctrination in the meantime. Anyway, I thought I'd just mention that to you, so that's quite interesting. I know for a fact that the moon landings didn't happen because you can't get out of our system, because we have gas pressure here. It's that simple. That's the end of the debate for me on that level. And anybody who wants to then try and conflate and confuse you and come out with all sorts of biochemical explanations, it's all nonsense. You know, it's like telling you that curved is flat, level. No, it's not. It's a different word. We are. Don't be fooled. There's a lot of that skullduggery going around, and we have to be on our guard. And not just from those who don't agree with what we talk about for some buffoonerism reason, but also within our own kind of circles of people who have similar leanings to us, but then also go with fairy tales to back their argument. Right? You know what I mean? So the Mayans believed in it. Right? Back in 20 BC and all that, believed in the flat earth. Look, it's got it on this drawing, which is identical to the other drawing, where it says the Aborigines believed in it. And it's identical to the drawing next to that. It's all the same, similar sort of drawing with a dome on it. Some have bits of oil underneath, some don't. Right? Sun and moon inside the system, and it tells us about all these ancient civilizations that believed in flat earth. Big mistake if you're going to go down that road and use that as an angle of argument, because we don't even know these peoples or civilizations existed. We have them in our history books, that's it. We don't have anything else, no proof, no validation, nothing. Right? We don't even know Henry VIII existed. By the way, Hampton Court, amazing red brick building built well before brick factories were ever invented. Are you intrigued? If the earth is flat, how can we have Camelot, night, and Doris, day? How can we have night and day if the earth is flat, ladies and gentlemen? It's one of the questions I have right here in my right hand. Would anybody like to assist me in answering this question? Did you like my southern English accent then? It's nice, wasn't it? Answer. Anyone? If the earth is flat, how can we have night and day? I'll give you a little keyword: perspective, vanishing point. So if you imagine, we have luminaries clearly in the sky, or what looks like luminaries. They might not really be there, they might just be in a apparent position where they are. The sun might not be exactly where we see it. Might not, might be, I've never been there. But we do notice that at the end of the day, when we have what's called a sunset, it goes down on our horizon line, doesn't it? It gets closer and closer to the ground. Eventually, it then disappears out of our sight. So I would put that down to perspective, that daylight then turns into nightlight because the thing creating the daylight has got so far away from our view. That's the only way I would explain it on a flat earth. I can't explain more than that because I have no idea what route these luminaries take. I don't even know if that's even, well, it isn't, accurate. Who knows? I mean, I find it more complicated to understand how night and day works on a planet. Think about that one, with your 23.4 degree angle, which leaves 66.6 degrees. Interesting number, just saying. Yeah, so night and day on a flat Earth, I can't really answer that, I don't know. But I do know the Earth is definitely flat, and I do know we have night and day. I can't answer though how that mechanically works, I don't really know. Sorry that I can't answer that. I mean, I'm actually okay with not knowing as well, by the way, as you've noticed. Like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to know, don't get me wrong, but there's some things I've had to teach myself over the past few years not to get so eaten up about not figuring something out, because that can be also dangerous. It can get you into a frame of mind that keeps you preoccupied with nonsense. And then you lose sight of really enjoying life and remembering that the here and now is also quite important. Because, you know, well, I won't go there, but, you know. Yeah. This microphone. That's all it is, this microphone. Don't know why I said that. If other planets don't exist, or did I say that?
I think you've done that one.
I've done that one, haven't I? Thank you. Here we go. How long ago do you think the Tartarian floods happened? I.e., how old is our current civilization? Anybody for any ideas on that one? I mean, I have a theory on it. I can't prove it, obviously, because I don't have a time machine. I mean, I know some of you do, but I don't, unfortunately. You know.
So what's your theory?
My theory is that no, we did have a reset of some sort, because we have proof that the ground has come up everywhere. Yeah, you have to walk everywhere. Everywhere you go, you'll see bits of windows popping up above the pavement. And if you go to any church, you'll see stairs on the side of a church going deep down. Even on a church that's in the middle of a field, where you can't use the excuse of engineers brought the roads up. There is no roads, it's just a field. And yet you have evidence of what they call mud flood in that sort of community. But the question was about how old do I think the current civilization is. I don't think it goes back further than the 1800s, beginning of the 1800s. I don't know how it would actually have happened, but I think that we were probably as a civilization rolled out around about the 1800s. When I think about, just off the top of my head now, the first World's Fair was in London, what they call the Crystal Palace World Fair of 1851. One of two Crystal Palaces, actually, although they say there was one and it was moved. Have you ever tried moving a Crystal Palace? How did you do that? Oi, mate, what? We have to move that. What? Let's move it. All right, yeah, hang on. No, definitely there were two of them. Marble Arch, same thing, by the way, in London, right? Marble Arch. Oh, they moved it from Buckingham Palace to how did they move that? How did they move that? It's made of white marble from areas of Italy that you'd struggle to get there from now. You know. But anyway, getting back to that. So 1851, my contention is that the World's Fairs that were kicked off in London, and it's not a coincidence, by the way, that it's London or England for that matter, and it's nothing to do with nationality, it's to do with Victoria, the significance of the word Victoria, what that actually means, the invocation of a new era, post-reset. It's no coincidence that everywhere around the world you have statues of Victoria, you have parks named after Victoria, you have waterfalls named after her, streets, Albert even, some German geezer, right? I mean, the Albert Hall, one of the most incredible buildings. You've got all these things all around the world that are named after Victoria and Albert. And then you've got other things like Osborne House and places like that where they went on holiday where you think you're in France or Spain when you look at the architecture. But you're not, you're on the Isle of Wight. Isn't that where they have a garlic festival? Once a year. I think so. So, I'm not going to come out with any garlic puns. I'm very tempted though. Yeah, so I think that's significant with the whole Victoria thing. It falls in line with the Industrial Revolution. I don't believe anything was invented in the 1800s. I think it was just that they rolled it out in lockstep with the population shift. I mean, so in my opinion, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, certain people were educated and then given information to then take from these World's Fairs, particularly this London one, to take out to regions of the world that eventually became countries. So that each country then had its own backstory and narrative that was then taught to kids at school. Don't forget, in 1851, no school systems were around. A lot of people are shocked when you say that. But if you look at the official history books, and go by the official narrative here, we didn't have school systems until the 1900s. Right? The only school-esque situations you had were kids going into a little room on the side of a chapel. On one wall you'd have Queen Victoria, and on the other wall you'd have a painting of Jesus. And they'd be sat there at their little wooden desks, perhaps learning the alphabet. That's it. You had no school curriculum, so you had no primary education, which begs the question, how do you come up with advanced education to create your architects and everyone else that you need to just plan these buildings, never mind build them and construct them, you know? So there's a lot of anomalies there. But I mentioned bricks earlier as well. We had brick yards, but brick factories that could produce thousands of bricks a day, which is what you would need, they didn't exist until 1885 here in the UK. Little fun fact, the Empire State Building in New York has 10 million bricks in it. Yeah. These skyscrapers in New York are not futuristic buildings. They're old world buildings. A lot of them. Right? But we get our eyes taken off them because there's lots of other jazzy things going on in New York. Like things collapsing and stuff. Right? So, but there are a lot of old world buildings that are built like we see them here in England, only here the ground has come up higher. Churches are just the tops of buildings. Right? I haven't got, unfortunately, photography with me. I was gone here, but I just didn't have the time to do it, to be honest. But if you look at the side of a church, right, so there's maybe a bit of the window there or whatever, there's the entrance or whatever. But what you'll see on the side of a church is often you'll see like thin, I call them stabilising walls, that get wider as they go down. They come off the main wall, so here's your main side wall, you'll have like bits of wall that come out, maybe a foot or two out, and they go down, they go a bit wide and they go further down. Now, if you look at the actual size of the church that these things are supposed to be supporting, you wouldn't need those stabiliser walls to hold those buildings up. Because the material alone of which they're built are so stable, they stand up all on their own anyway. I mean, we don't even need them for high-rise buildings today, with lesser materials and much cheaper materials than the hard stone and rock that was used back in the day to build our churches, the cathedrals and such like, right? So that is for me a clear indication. So if you look at the side of it, forget that. If you look at the stairs, the wall, and on the side you'll have like that bit of wall that comes out like that. Then you've got a bit there, goes down, and then often the bottom, where the ground meets the church, it has a bit of a base. And there's your ground, right? And they're like the stable, and each church has a lot of them going around the main body of the church. So what's their purpose? Well, we know through a lot of research around the world that those buildings go deep in the ground. Deep. So that makes them bigger than what they already are. What, for a few wooden benches? Really? No. Nonsense. Just a bit of logic will tell you that. So what were they for then? Well, we don't know. There's lots of speculation about energy and about the transference of energy and sacred geometry. You know, you look at the shapes of what we turn into windows, you know, and all that sort of stuff. They're all near water. A lot of these buildings are on the top of what we call mounds. Well, we have a lot of them in England. Have you heard of Silbury Hill? Well, did you know that Silbury Hill is a pyramid? And it's roughly the same size as the ones in Egypt? No? Not a lot of people know that. Didn't quite get the accent right there. Yeah. It's 160 metres along the base. It's rather large. And I think, if I got my bearings right, it's at least 30 metres tall. At least. That's Silbury Hill. And there's other stuff around it that's very interesting as well. Now, even if you go to Stonehenge, I think the same's going on there as Corfe Castle. Corfe Castle is the stage set, Stonehenge is the stage set. But look at what Corfe Castle is on, just like Glastonbury Tor, look what it's on. Just like Stonehenge, look what it's amongst. If you go around Stonehenge, you've got a lot of burial mounds, they call it. Why do they call it that? To keep people away. Because it gives you that sacred feel, keeps you away from, oh, you can't go there. There's whole families buried in there. Well, what are you about? Families buried. What do they do? Watching Play School or something? They all die together. What are you on about? Families buried in there. What are you talking about? Right? And you've got the same, what's another one? Outside Salisbury. Old Sarum, there's another one. You've got your brown British heritage sign. Fortress. Go there, it's a frigging grass mound. No fortress in sight. Until you start using your noggin and you realise, well, hang on a minute, actually, again, they're hiding it in plain sight. They couldn't really do much with stage set. They've already got a huge cathedral in Salisbury, so that's enough to take people's eyes off it anyway, as a distraction. Because it's all about smokes and mirrors and distraction, don't forget that. And some of it they'll put in plain sight. I think the Glastonbury Tor is the most interesting one in terms of the most obvious one. A little bit of rock. Like, what else was that before it was that? Was that mound bigger at one point, or what happened there then? Who put that there? I think personally it's higher than the mounds below it. If you took the grass off, you'd probably see the original form. And I think the pyramid. And you have that all around the world. What are pyramids? I hear you all ask. Well, I personally think that they're the tops of obelisks. That's why we see obelisks everywhere. Look at the top of an obelisk. And how would you ever know that it's not the top of an obelisk? You're not going to dig that far down to figure that out. Even the ones in Egypt, you can't get down far enough. And by the way, you can't build pyramids on sand. So they're obviously on something solid, aren't they? Right? Just saying. Obelisk on the embankment in London. There's one in Place de Concorde in Paris. We got to see it in the Paralympic Games. I was watching the Paralympics. And it was there. It was part of their centre stage, in fact. And then they've got one in the Vatican. They've got one everywhere. All significant places around the world. When I say round the world, I mean round on a flat surface. So I think that is. I think there is a connection there between the pyramid and the sheer shape of an obelisk. The top of an obelisk definitely depicts a pyramid, or vice versa. A pyramid definitely looks like the top of an obelisk, only a larger scale. Well, who's not to say that the species before us were much, much larger? I mean, how else would you explain these huge monstrosities that are built around the world? I mean, they teach our kids about dinosaurs. How are you building anything with one of them? You know what I mean? Can't you pick your nose? T-Rex. But, good band. So, for me, it is actually all interlinked. It's just that some of it is, it kind of presented in a way that skews, obviously, the picture it's supposed to. You're not supposed to figure stuff out. I think back to when my mum still has my first ever work that I did at school as a boy in primary school. And it was two things that we had as kids. One was about Egypt, and one was about dinosaurs. Isn't that telling? And that goes back to 1981, 1980, the year Lennon was shot in his Dakota house. Dakota was the building where they filmed Rosemary's Baby, directed by Roman Polanski, starring Sharon Tate. Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, getting back to what I was talking about. Roman Polanski. Still an arrest warrant out for him, by the way. I'll just mention that.
Sven?
Yeah, well.
If you want to take a break at any point, that would be good, because I think this camera's going to be
Awesome. So, are you good with that? Am I boring you? If I am, we can end it now if you want. No? Okay. So we'll have a break and then we'll reconvene in 15 minutes. Is that okay? Okie dokie. Speak to you in a sec.